afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our latest edition of our Fireside Chat with our Chief County Executive Officer, Sonia De La Rosa. Good afternoon, Sonia. How are you today?
Good afternoon. How are you doing? Everything's good here, except for, we have a little bit of fog this morning. So otherwise,
Yeah.
all is good.
Well, fog is good considering how hot it's been, and it's so hot, I've decided that we're not going to do a fireside chat today. I'm going to be outside underneath my lemon tree, sipping on some lemonade.
Makes sense. It makes sense. Bring some for us.
Exactly, will do. So, it's amazing. It is summer. It's July already. It's hard to believe it's July 8th. And where does time go? I mean, do you have any plans this summer? And what are some of the things you enjoy doing with your family during summer break?
So, lucky enough, I have my 4 adult kids are actually out of school already, but I do have my 15-year-old visiting here in the area. We're actually out of Castroville now. And he's actually spending a little bit of time here with his brother. And we recently adopted a dog. So that's what we were doing. And as many people know, if the dog is part of the family, that means everything revolves around the dog. And that's the summer plan, is to continue to train him and make sure he doesn't take any socks with him wherever he goes, because right now he's a bit of a thief.
Well, long walks, give him lots of exercise so he tires him out at night.
Yes. Right now he's chasing himself most of the time, or butterflies. Butterfly shadows. That's his sport right now.
Well, that's fun. It's always fun to watch puppies do things. It kind of reminds me of when my kids were little and they just do things randomly, and it's like you get a big chuckle out of it all the time.
That's right. You just live in the moment.
Exactly. Well, the last time we got together, we learned about how much you like reading. Are there any new books that you're reading this summer that you want to share?
So I have actually been in quite a few virtual trainings where I've learned about books that I might want to read. And right now I've gotten all those books. I actually went through the NACO Leadership Academy, the second portion, which is related to purpose, the purpose of why we do the work that we do. But it goes more in depth into what is your personal purpose, not just the purpose of the service that we do as county employees, but those things that drive you, those things that make you do your best work. How do you focus on those, and how do you hone it in so that it lends itself back to the work that you do in the community? So what I've gotten very good about it's not really the reading piece right now. It's more about getting all those books that they're mentioning in those trainings, because eventually I do want to do some catch up, and most of it because it was related to purpose. And I think something inside of us drives us to do those things that we do and those things that we love. And once you find that, then it's really not about the work itself. It's about the purpose that you get and the achievements of doing good work. And so I have some books on dock. I just haven't had a chance to dive into them for a bit. I was actually stuck on James Patterson books. And I like both his murder mystery books, and I also like his more romantic rom-com type of books, because I think he's such an interesting author where he's able to navigate both, and he's so good at doing both sides. But it's really good to just go into a different dimension. So that's why if anything, James Patterson is usually my go-to right now.
Yeah, and he's such a great author. When he writes something, you can kind of play a movie in your mind, and
Yes.
It's amazing. I love that.
Exactly. And he takes you places in Washington, D.C. that you're just like, okay, wait a minute. I've gone down that street. It's like you're able to actually visualize when you visit these locations. And then one of the books I recently read he was actually talking about being in California. So that was interesting too, just how he transports himself to these different places.
Yeah. Well, speaking of different places, if you had a wish from a genie that you could go anywhere you wanted to go this summer, where would you go?
Interesting enough, I just went to Vietnam in April, and it was so interesting how much those communities in Vietnam and Cambodia, they reminded me a lot of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. And quite frankly, my go-to has always been Puerto Vallarta. I really like the older part of Puerto Vallarta. And I think even having gone to Vietnam and Cambodia, I still go back to my Puerto Vallarta just because time slows down, for a lot of us that have family in Mexico and are able to go visit them, or family anywhere in the world, quite frankly. We move at such a different speed here in California and the United States that when you go to another country, you realize it's completely different in what is their focus, the importance of actually having a siesta in the middle of the day, but also the importance of being there to be able to feed your children when they come from school and then they go back later in the day. Just a sense of family that's there and connection to community. I know you recently traveled as well to the European area. I think you probably saw the same thing, right?
Well, yeah, by the time this video plays, you're right. I will have gone on my vacation. But yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so there you go.
I'm like you. I've traveled to a lot of places in third world countries, and it is amazing. What's for me, what's amazing is how different, but how the same we are.
Yes,
And
yes.
those things, those core values are no matter where I've gone in the world, they're the same. Family, faith,
Hmm.
work, all those things kind of tie us all together. And that's one of the things I love about traveling.
Yeah, and that's really one of the things that I really like, I think, about Puerto Vallarta, and also having gone on this trip, it is to be able to see just the love of the people from those communities. And obviously we're there, they know we're tourists, they know we're visiting for a short period, but everybody always has a choice of how they're going to treat people.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that regardless of where I went, the people were just so kind. And
Mhm.
so it was relaxing in that way, that they were so kind and always willing to help you. And I find that a lot in Puerto Vallarta as well. Everybody says good morning to you. Everybody's, and one of the things that they do in Mexico is that when you come in and you sit at a table, somebody else is leaving, they turn around and they say, provecho, which is
Oh.
enjoy your food.
Mhm.
And it's like, how, we don't do that enough, right? We don't talk to each other in that way. And those are some of the little things that make such a big difference of how you view the world and how others view us. So I think those little nuggets that happen when we're on visiting other locations has been key to me wanting to go back to those communities.
Absolutely. And it's one of the beautiful things about, our Latin culture is so much of our world or in our social encounters revolve around the table and
Yeah.
revolve around food. And it's the table that brings people together and whatnot. And that's where community happens. And, you see that around the world too.
And really, recently, it's the barbecue pit, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's amazing. Our dog is a fan of the barbecue pit as well. So so we've been doing that these last few days, and again, just a reminder of the beautiful community that we live in, that we're able to barbecue and in Fresno it's been over 110 recently. So that just gives you a general idea of here it's 70s and 80s, and in
Yeah.
some of our communities in South County, of course, it is in 110
Mm,
arena. But at the end of the day, thankfully, we do have that cool down and ability to be able to enjoy a barbecue if that's what we choose to do.
exactly. Well, shifting gears a little bit, from the frying pan into the fryer, so to
Okay.
speak. A couple of months ago, the board got together with the county administrative office and the department heads and had a strategic planning meeting.
Yeah.
And was wondering if you might kind of talk about some of the, a few takeaways that for you, really stood out and that you're really looking forward to getting implemented or enacting throughout the county.
So that strategic planning discussion is actually still in process. It's still evolving. We did meet with all of our department heads and our board supervisors to gather information in terms of what are those key things, key goals that we want to accomplish within the next 3 to 5 years? What are those key items that we want to stay focused on? And then also bringing some of the language that we've had in place since 2008. I mean, that was the last time that a strategic plan was put together. We've had a couple updates since 2008, but ultimately there really hasn't been a dive into those strategic initiatives or goals. And so in working with our department heads and our board of supervisors, and also a consultant is Jan Perkins, the idea is to try to bring it up to date from 2008. And if you think of 2008 and what's happened since then, it just gives you an idea of how much we've evolved as a community, but also how much we've transitioned from the way we were in 2008. It wasn't until 2009-10 where we really saw the real estate crash. But then after that, during that period, actually, I'm sure that some of us that are listening, went through a time where some of our friends or we were losing our homes. And in one of the things that we probably didn't think of at that time, of course, because we were focused on trying to maintain our homes, trying to maintain our families in a safe place, is that, our kids were going to school with kids that were also losing their homes. And so these kids, this is, again, here we are in 2024, this happened in 2010, so 14 years ago. If you think of, for example, my son, who's 15 today, he was only 1 year old, but then I had other kids that were, around 10 years old, around 12 years old, 13. And the reason I bring that up is because now those folks are, 14 years later, life looks very different for them. Again, it's just in looking at some of these strategic initiatives, we're talking about housing, we're talking about homelessness, we're talking about, again, public safety, but with a different perspective in mind.
Excellent. Yeah. And it's such important work. And, it kind of, when you think in terms of public service, you're amplifying all the things that go into the fabric of what public service is all about.
Yes.
It's so important. And it's an important process that the county goes through and adjusts its plans and its vision for how to make the county better and more livable for everybody.
Yes. And one of the key things that has come up as part of this process is our employee resource groups that have actually given a voice to many folks that are, just in the way that we serve, but also in the way that we treat each other. Some of those, that real-time feedback of where we can do better and where we're doing really well. And so those are the sorts of things that you'll see embedded within the strategic goals and the key objectives of, what are the next steps that we need to take, and what can we make better, and where do we really need to focus to bring us to the next level. Many of the things that we have been focused on will continue to be, of course, key for us, but then just looking at them from a different perspective.
Correct. Yeah. And a lot of what you just said kind of wraps into kind of a culture, this idea of creating a culture.
Yes.
Not just within the county government, but within the county overall, right? And so
Yes.
What kind of culture, in your own vision, what kind of culture do you see evolving over the next couple of years within the county?
I think we see it already, even though many of us are teleworking certain days of the week. It is also that sense of connection to those that we work with and to our community, and really looking at what is important for our communities, what services do they need, but also looking to evolve how we serve, right? We know there was a referral that came forward from the Board of Supervisors related to the language of our board meetings. So that's something that Valerie at the board clerk has been working on to make sure that simultaneously we have Spanish and English board meetings, just the presence of individuals that speak Spanish. But what we've seen in the interaction with our community is really, there's so much more information that we can capture when we're able to communicate, when they're able to understand real time. Anybody that's, listening into our meetings, able to understand real time and also provide an opinion or provide input into any work that we are doing. From adopting a resolution to putting a contract in place to seeking additional information from our departments. Those are those are nuggets of information that only make us better by
Mhm.
allowing people to understand real time. I mean, certainly you can go watch a video, pull it up, but the ability to be able to pull it up in a language that you understand or
Right.
that your family members understand is very different, because not only are you capturing the English speaking audience, but now you're capturing the Spanish speaking audience. And eventually there'll be a time where you'll be able to click and get whatever language you need, right? Similar to what you're able to do now
Mhm.
with written documents. But that's what my thought is in terms of the culture, is just having an opportunity to communicate, whether it's in written form, whether it's through a video, whether it's through a call, but then also building bettering our services based on that input that we're receiving. And it's not just the external folks that I'm talking about. I'm talking about those of us that are doing the work in and out.
Yeah.
We have ideas of how we could do it better,
Yeah.
and sometimes, again, those ideas come up whether you're sitting in an office at your cubicle, or you're sitting at home and logging in and doing that work. There are ways that we can make it better, not just for yourself, but those that are doing the same thing that you are.
Yeah, it's so true. And you remind me of a communications program I went through a number of years ago in leadership, and it talked about the difference between a monologue and a dialogue.
Yeah,
And for so long, we're used to, as a society in American culture, we're used to being talked to or talked
yeah.
at instead of having that dialogue, which requires this, two-way communication, the ability for each person to be heard and to voice. And you explained that just so beautifully with regard to language and the importance of breaking down barriers and engagement of the community if you're able to communicate with them in their language.
And I hope that we see more of that, Nick. I think that's one of those things that you and I are going to partner on, just getting more information out to the community about what we are doing. And,
Mm.
and that's one of the things about sharing information, right? You're going to share information. We're going to get feedback. Sometimes the feedback is going to be complimentary. Sometimes the feedback is going to be critical. And sometimes we're going to hear nothing. And the thing is, we have to be ready to adapt. Not every single thing is going to require a response, but to be able to see, okay, how can we enhance what we just shared? How can we, address that very specific situation that came up? And quite frankly, throughout the course of the year, the challenges are different, right? I mean, right now we are negotiating with several of our units, and the focus of our team might be in those negotiations that are occurring. But then also we're going to be talking about health insurance, and we're going to be talking potentially about retirement and those other items, right? So during the course of the year, there's different things that come up, and it's not that any one of those things is not important. It's just during the course of the year, the conversations change a little bit. And that's why it's so important to have that ongoing communication with our team, so that we're hearing it and able to respond to some of those challenges that we know we're all experiencing.
Yeah, it's so true, so true. And on this topic of culture, often for me, it's like I'm always exploring and want to learn more about different cultures. And
Mm-hmm.
to shift gears a little bit away from the county and back to you personally, um, is there a culture that you really would want to study and learn about that maybe you haven't done before or haven't thought of?
You know, I've I'm always interested in just learning the different, obviously, because we're very embedded into, the Mexican culture, because that's where we came from. But what's been so interesting to me is how many similarities we have with other cultures. And for example, the Day of the Dead is not just for our Mexican, brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and grandpas and grandparents. Um, it's shared by other communities, and I saw that when obviously with friends that I have that are that live in Fresno, that some of them are folks that I still go and visit, and understanding that many of our cultures have those overlaps. And so when you're talking about, for example, the Day of the Dead, it means very similar to what the Vietnamese culture
Mhm.
does during that time, or when it is that they celebrate the Day of the Dead. But I think that's what's been interesting is it'd be great to see, for me to know what other communities share some of those very similar celebrations. You know, for example, I know that the Philippines also was, at one time there was a Spanish presence there. So there's a lot of overlap in some of the culture there. But even here, and the people that we connect with through our work, you get these little glimpses of these different cultural experiences that they have, and it makes you curious of, okay, so what else is there that's very similar to our communities, and it's a different level of appreciation of how we do things. So that's what I thought was so interesting about being in Vietnam. Again, it reminded me of the Yucatan Peninsula because of the weather, but then at the same time, the indigenous presence that's there, and the very, you know, it's almost like many of the areas have been undisturbed. So that piece is really interesting as well. So I think given the opportunity, even within our you know, Mexico, to be able to visit those different areas, and this, quite frankly, the United States is very similar as well. What we do in California is very different to what's done in the East Coast, which again, you know, it's even here just learning those different the things that are just a little different to the way we do things in our community.
Exactly, and that's what makes being part of the human family so rich and so fulfilling. I tell you, it's amazing.
Yes, very true.
Well, our time is almost done, and I also want to thank you for you know, taking the time, because I know this is a commitment for you, and I know you enjoy doing it, and I know our folks enjoy hearing from you. But we have some interesting news. We're going to be expanding this series to include our other county, the assistant county administrative officers, as well as our chief assistant. So stay tuned for more information about that, but probably sometime in August we'll do our first one, in September, and we'll go on from there. But Sonia, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer and that puppy.
It's a good sized puppy. He's 9 months and he's a Doberman.
Oh wow.
So yeah, he's a little reindeer.
Oh wow. They're so cute when they're not, you can't even say they're small. They're kind of come out medium, don't they?
Yeah, no, he's been doing pretty good. And again, it's like you're bringing in somebody that's just rattling our world right now. So yeah, but and actually I was able to adopt him from the Hitchcock facility. So yeah, if you're looking for a friend, big or small, they have them there for you.
That's excellent. That's a great plug for our county animal shelter.
Exactly.
Maya Carroll will appreciate that very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sonia. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. You too. Bye.